A new year brings new optimism for any sport. For people who don't watch sports, a new year is a clean, fresh start and an opportunity to do better than you did before. This is my hope for boxing in 2022, and this is my boxing wish list. 5 things that I want to happen in the new year. 5 things that I think can make the sport better, and an honorable mention thrown in there as well. And my honorable mention is Ryan Garcia. Yeah, Ryan Garcia. I'd like to see him back in the ring, regardless of if you like him or not. The man has a following outside of the sport. He brings casuals, and casuals are good for boxing. People like Ryan Garcia and even Jake Paul are tremendous for the sport because, again, they bring attention to the sport that wouldn't otherwise be there, and they make new fans. Ryan Garcia in 2021 wasn't very active. I hope that changes in 2022. The problem, I think, with Ryan Garcia was the fact that he attained a certain level of fame prior to big fights. He does not want to lose that, and I think that deep down he feels that a loss would take away some of his fame. If you have confidence, you go forward, you continue to fight. He has a chance to be something special in the sport, but he has to realize it's bigger than a one-loss record. His promoter, Oscar De La Hoya, was a huge name in the sport, pay-per-view draw. Ryan Garcia can follow in those footsteps. He can follow in the footsteps of Oscar De La Hoya, Canelo Alvarez, but he has to believe in himself enough to do so. I'd like to see him in with any of the top lightweights, but just to see him in action would be good enough for me for now. At number 5, Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol. I've never seen two undefeated fighters hold titles in a weight class and not mention each other longer than I've seen this. This is a situation where both fighters seem to be content to stay in their own lanes. The fact that they're not American fighters allows them to kind of win and continue to dominate in obscurity. No one's asking for this fight, it seems, outside of the United States, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe in the United States we're not asking for the fight. This is not a situation where the fighters mention each other, but their networks don't cooperate, or their promoters don't get along, or there's some sort of roadblock in the way. There doesn't seem to be one. The guys just don't mention each other very often. And with Bivol, I think he's the best boxer in the division. I think Artur Beterbiev is the biggest puncher, the best fighter, I would say, in the division. So it's a perfect contrast to styles, and I would love to see it. Why they don't mention each other's names, I don't know. But Bivol needs this fight. He's had 3 sort of lackluster fights since a good victory, a nice victory over the hard-punching Joe Smith in 2019. Beterbiev just fought Marcus Brown in a war, a very good fight. And I think that was a good fight for him because it gathers momentum. But he is also now in the Canelo Alvarez sweepstakes. So the chances of this fight happening in 2022, I think, are pretty slim. But I would love to see it. I would love to see these two fight to declare supremacy at 175 pounds. Again, it's one of the top, one of the oldest divisions in the sport. It's one of the original 8. So you want clarification at any weight class, but particularly the original 8 weight classes. You want a true champion, whether it's undisputed or at least a guy at the top of the division that we know this is the man. This is the, whether it's the lineal champion or any sort of unification, that's what we want. At number 4, middleweight. I'd love to see Demetrius Andrade versus Jamal Charlo. Now, you've heard rumors of Charlo versus Benavidez if Charlo moves up to 168. Recently, we've heard that Andrade will move up to 168 as well. They're both big middleweights, and I don't know how long they can hold 160. While Triple G looks like more of a small bone fighter and a true 160 pounder, I don't think his sights are set necessarily on a division, but more on a person, the same person that his sights have been on for a number of years. I'll get back to that in a minute. Number 3, Devin Haney versus George Kambosos. George Kambosos had the upset of the year in 2021. Devin Haney made strides towards superstardom and is probably, if not the, one of the top young talents in the sport. 135-pound WBC 135-pound champion, actually. And there have been controversy on Undisputed. Is George Kambosos undisputed? Was Teofimo Lopez undisputed before him? And in my opinion, the answer is no. And if they dispute that, Kambosos now being the champion, just fight Devin Haney, get the victory, and you're undisputed. Particularly when Haney is willing to acquiesce to pretty much whatever it is you're asking for. Is he willing to go to your hometown? Check. Is his network, the Zone, willing to pay you? Check. I'm a little bit more optimistic about this one than I was about the B-ball and Better Be of situation, because the fighters have met. It's on video. They've talked about it. Let's see this one in 2022. I think this one has a good chance of happening. At number 2, I want a worthy challenge for Canelo Alvarez. And that's not a knock against Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, or anyone else that he beat in 2021. Those were good fighters. He beat 3 undefeated fighters over the past year and a half to unify titles. I can't be mad at that. There are some who feel that he ducked David Benavidez. Unfortunately for Benavidez, some of his problems, well, a lot of his problems were his own doing. He seems to be back on track now. Do I think he'll get the Canelo shot in 2022? I don't see it happening. But I do think that the Triple G fight can happen. I do want to see the Triple G Canelo trilogy, not because I think it's the best fight out there, but because we need closure. And things are at a standstill in not only one division, but pretty much everything from 175 to 160 is on hold because of the desire for all these fighters. Charlo, Andre, Triple G, now even Better Be If. Their sights are all set on Canelo Alvarez, the cash cow of the division. So let's get the Triple G fight out of the way, close that chapter, and move on. Finally, Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford. This is a must-have for 2022. After what happened with Spence and his accident and his eye surgery, he has to know that he needs to get these big fights in as soon as possible. For Terrence Crawford, years of sort of questionable decisions outside of the ring in terms of management or fight selection has kind of finally turned around a bit with the Sean Porter victory. He had the Kell Brook victory before that. Regardless of what version of Kell Brook we think he fought, it was still a nice name on his resume, and the Sean Porter fight gave him momentum. What should he do? Should he wait on Errol Spence? Should he wait on the Errol Spence Ugas winner? Or should he have a fight in the meantime? That's a kind of a topic for a separate video. I have my personal opinion on what he should do, but I do want to see this fight. I want to see this fight preserved. If recent history has taught us anything, it's that we have to lock in these big fights. We wanted to see Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder. Obviously, even if that fight happens one day, it's never going to have the luster that it could have had a few years ago. I want to see this. This is at the very top of the list for any boxing fan, I would think, to see Spence versus Crawford. It's Super Fight 22. This is our Super Bowl. This is our World Series of boxing. And I think that it has a solid chance of happening. I'm going to say 50-50. But don't sleep on Ugas. He's come along late in his career. I think that he's one of those guys who his record doesn't show what he is. There are fighters who, recent years, Winky Wright, Glenn Johnson, who went on the road and fought whoever, whenever, and they took a few losses, but they continued to get better and better. I think that's the case with Ugas. So Spence Ugas is a tough fight for Errol Spence. Hopefully Spence pulls through so we can get the fight that we've been hoping for. So yeah, this is the state of boxing so far, 2022. There's so many other topics to discuss, but this was my wish list. We'll check back maybe mid-year to see where we are with it. Like, subscribe, share. This is the State of Boxing.